Hello and welcome, members of the Wanderverse. I'm Hannah.
And I'm producer Nick.
And you're listening to Into the Wanderverse, your one and only source into all things Scarlet Witch. This is a very exciting episode this week because we have our very first ever proper guest. We are so lucky this week to be interviewing the Doctor from Agatha All Along, aka Scott Butler. Thank you so much, Scott, for coming on. We say this so much in this interview. We're just so grateful that he gave us so much of his time. He is the sweetest person ever. He is so amazing. And we could not be more grateful that he came on and was our first real guest.
Yeah, it was a really, really great interview. I'm really looking forward to you guys hearing it. When obviously, let us know. You're gonna listen to it, but let us know what you think, and if you have any further questions for him, we can see what we can do about that. Yeah. But I think we're gonna just do a little bit of news. There's been a lot of confusion recently.
It's been a bit crazy. Literally, it's every 24. I'm kind of glad we shot this now because 24 hours ago I would have sent out.
There was a whole other thing.
So as I reported a couple of weeks ago, the new TVA comic features Scarlet Witch.
Yes.
And a panel went so goddamn viral. I don't think we've had a viral moment like this for so long.
It went so viral, I saw it on my socials.
That allegedly MCU Wanda seemed to be appearing. The canon MCU Wanda seemed to be appearing in this TVA comic. And initially it was confirmed that it was our MCU Wanda trapped in the TVA. We have now had it clarified over on Instagram by the artist that it's a very close variant. It is not our Wanda, but it is a version of Wanda, we think.
So to clarify, why did everybody, including you, go full on, oh my god?
Well, for starters, obviously comic Wanda looks very different to MCU Wanda. And then everyone was like, hey, that looks like Elizabeth Olsen's Wanda. Obviously in Deadpool and the Wolverine, we saw the statue in the void.
Shrine? Wasn't it a shrine though?
No, it's the statue from the temple.
Oh right, yeah, in the void.
In the void. And so everyone was like, oh my god, the TVA has Wanda. And she was inside this tube. She had the black fingers from Multiverse of Madness. I actually thought, my theory on this had always been that it was Wanda, but in between WandaVision and Multiverse of Madness, because her outfit wasn't corrupted. So I was like, guys, hold on. I think this is going to be, because again, we've had tie-in comics before that fill in gaps between movies, and I was like, maybe they're going to try and explain how she got so kooky.
Because the first question mark, the first little red flag for myself, who's somebody who's hasn't read the TVA comic, but the first little kind of red flag for me was that this wasn't Elizabeth Olsen Wanda. This wasn't the MC Wanda that we all know and love from the TV and the movies. The first thing for me was the scene is Spider-Gwen going into a room and then she is there. The Spider-Gwen hasn't been fully introduced into the MCU yet.
So we have been told, so this is the TVA from the MCU.
Right.
And so these characters, because there's a Gambit variant and a Spider-Gwen variant working alongside Morbius in the TVA. It is our TVA. It's the same one from Deadpool and Wolverine, etc., etc., etc. It is them. However, this is not our Wanda. And it's obviously not the Gwen Stacy that I believe will appear in the MCU.
Well, the thing that makes Spider-Gwen special is Miles Morales. She's the only one. She's the only Spider-Gwen. I'm pretty sure.
Look, bro.
I'm pretty sure.
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah. So So that was kind of my kind of thing. Was she's not been properly introduced yet into the MCU.
Yeah.
And there's all this whole thing about incursion events and possibly that can be a whole thing. Anyway, so my red flag was I personally don't believe that they would put Elizabeth Olsen, Scarlet Witch, into the TVA.
I mean, I thought it was a bold choice. I was going to be if you want to sell comics, this is, I mean, that's what we're all saying. We're this is probably...
I wonder how many they sold.
I mean, a lot. I know I went out and bought it. A bunch of my friends, the lovely Lily, who does our podcast, messaged me and she was like, I ordered the whole series. They sold us on it, and it was confirmed on Instagram. I wasn't being delusional. No. It was confirmed that this is Elizabeth Olsen. Also, the writer was teasing it. Everyone was teasing it. We were sold. We were down the river, and again, I'll still read it. I was always gonna buy issue 5. I just didn't know she was gonna be in more than one issue. I don't tend to buy physical comics unless I know what the content is because I have the Marvel Unlimited app. But yeah, so then I make this video and I'm like, it's confirmed, and then 24 hours later,
iron face,
literally I look like such a dip, and people in my comments are being like, I never believed it, and I'm like, look, I only believed it because I was told. But you know what, there was obviously some confusion there, and you know, this comic is still going to be really exciting because it's written by Catherine Blair, who wrote the second season of Loki. Like, that's still cool. Like, it's still very fun, very interesting to see.
And don't get us wrong, like, you know, because this whole confusion has happened, and also it's probably one of the most viral moments of involving Scarlet Witch in quite a while. Probably, you know, since Multiverse Madness.
The demand for her. Like,
so, like, it's the most viral moment. You know, like I said, it went so viral, it ended up on my socials, that we are trying to get to the bottom of it. And if we can get answers from those people that are able to have answers in terms of what happened with the confusion, then we will try and find that out for you.
But you know what? I'm still excited for the run. I you know what? Any variant is interesting to me. Obviously, I keep up with the Scarlet Witch, like, main comic line. I keep up with the Avengers. I keep up with any event she appears in. So, like, I was always going to cover it. This was just like, oh my god, like, here she is back. Is this going to lead into Doomsday? No, obviously not. Again, it did seem a little far-fetched that this is where it was going to go. But, you know. It is what it is. Obviously, we got that interesting news from Brad Winterbaum that they definitely do want to make a second season of Agatha All Along. It's just about finding the right idea, was what he said very recently, which is contradictory to what Patti LuPone said. But she was so quiet on the red carpet when they were like, "Hey, Patti, did you hear what Brad said?" I don't know if they finally got her under an NDA or what, but, like, I love her so much. It was lovely to see Catherine and Elizabeth reunite at the Spirit Awards. Elizabeth looked amazing. Obviously, Doomsday is starting to film.
It's
Pinewood.
building sets and
and Chris Hemsworth has landed by the looks of things.
The rumor mill is starting to ramp up, which, you know, as somebody who loves rumors,
I need you guys to know, it's been said a lot in my comment section, there is no official cast list for Doomsday. Nope. We have absolutely no shooting schedule either. That we don't know if they're shooting back-to-back Doomsday and Secret Wars. We do not know what is going on. So please don't tell me anything about any cast lists you've seen online. They are all fake. They are deliberately not confirming this cast list, full stop. We're going to find out who's in this movie entirely by on-set leaks, I feel like.
I think it's going to be one of those things, like, do we, what's the next on the MCU slate? It's Thunderbolts. With an asterisk.
We've been told Thunderbolts will be featured in Doomsday. That's something that's been confirmed. Right. And I believe, obviously, we know Anthony Mackie is confirmed for Doomsday, and seemingly Chris Hemsworth, because he's there.
Yeah. And obviously RDJ as Doom.
And the Fantastic Four have been confirmed as well.
Yeah.
Basically, I would expect to see the main Avengers team. I would expect to see Tom Holland back.
Yeah.
But we have no official cast list, so anything other than, I believe, the Thunderbolts and the Fantastic Four have both been absolutely confirmed, and Anthony Mackie. And that is kind of all that we have at this moment. I imagine that the Falcon will be in there too, but, like, we'll see. So we're not going to go super into news right now because we're going to give you a more rounded update, because this episode is going to be super long, because we now have our amazing interview with Scott Butler. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, just before we because we pre-recorded this a few days ago, so before we play it for you guys, I just wanted to say, like, if Scott is listening to this, thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure to have you on, and we are looking forward to hopefully chatting with you again in future, and basically seeing what else you're kind of up to.
Absolutely.
So I think here it goes. Here is our interview now with Scott Butler.
We are super lucky today because the wonderful Scott Butler, who played the Doctor on Agatha All Along, it's a shame we don't have a full name, but, you know, Marvel is mysterious that way, has agreed to be interviewed by us. So hello and welcome to the Wonderverse, Scott.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You guys might have seen Scott is super active on Instagram and loves to see fan work, and we're so grateful to have him in the fandom. It's so lovely to have actors who want to engage, because, you know, Marvel fans can be a little bit crazy sometimes, so it's really nice to have somebody that, like, is very accepting of all of that.
I'm a crazy fan too, so it's all good. We're all in good company. I love movies, I love TV. I'm just as much a fanboy as everybody else. So
So were you a fan of like Marvel specifically? Had you seen a lot of the MCU before you kind of entered the MCU as an actor?
Well, I started acting 16 years ago, and I think my Marvel experience before then was pretty limited. I wasn't a massive comic person. I was sort of more into video games, fantasy books, fantasy movies, sci-fi, that kind of stuff. But I did have some comics. I had when in the 80s as a kid, I used to collect toys called Zoids. I don't know if you know about those. They're like robot dinosaurs.
Yes,
And
I do know about
there was
this.
a comic in the 80s called Spider-Man and Zoids. They weren't sure I think they weren't sure if the Zoids thing was going to work out as a comic, so they just kind of lumped it in with the Spider-Man comic. And that was sort of like my first real exposure to Marvel with Spider-Man. So, but when Agatha came up, I'd now watched, lots of movies, lots of stuff. So Iron Man was a massive thing for me, like when that came out in 2008, 2009, whenever that was. I was just extremely impressed. It was a great story. It was very compelling. It was a just epic movie. It was fantastic.
So I don't know how much you can tell us, but I was wondering what the audition process was like for Agatha All Along. Did you know it was a Marvel project, or did you know anything about the character, or did you just kind of like what was like the brief almost?
Yeah, it was. I actually looked back at it because somebody had asked me about this. It was back in November 2022. So it's 2.5 years now or something like that. So it was it was a while back. I got this audition come through. It did say Marvel, but it didn't say anything else.
Yeah.
It just said untitled Marvel, and I get the sides for it for the scene, and I have no context. And I don't know when as an actor when you get sides to audition from, you don't know if the sides are the actual lines or the actual characters or the actual scenario that's going to be shot. Especially with Marvel, they could be disguised. They could sort of, be mixing up a little bit just to try to stop leaks and all that kind of stuff, which I totally understand. So when I did it, I was just like, okay, this is what I need to do. These are things I need to say. I'm going to come up with something that works. I have some experience with mime and creature performance work. So even though he's a human character to some degree, I wanted to make sure that there was a little bit of sort of subtle oddity to how he moves so that it keeps it a little mysterious and a little strange.
Yeah, especially because it's a dream sequence kind of thing.
Well, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know it was a dream sequence. I didn't know it was a hallucination or anything. So the scene was literally just like, this is what's happening in the moment. So I love mysterious, strange characters. I like, villains. I like surreal movies. I like David Lynch. I'm a big fan of his work. And I like stuff that's just a little bit off kilter without being overacted, without seeming absurd. So I like to do stuff that kind of just does that like 1 or 2% off,
Yeah.
So when I did the audition, I wanted to have which you see in the show, have my arms out, which you don't really see so much in the self-tape because of the crop of the frame, but
yeah.
I had my arms out to sort of like display this kind of A shape, which suggests support, foundation, and a larger silhouette. And it also says that even though he has just appeared when she comes back out of the pantry in the show, that was not in the script, that, he is in control. He has his back to her. And even though she comes into the room, he doesn't flinch, he doesn't move, he has complete control, even though he has essentially got his back to somebody, which obviously is a disadvantaged position typically. And then when he slowly turns, I do the head first and then kind of twist the body. You'll see the head twist first and the body twists. And the reason for that is firstly to sort of look a little odd, right? Most people would sort of turn most of their body almost at the same time. But also because the way predatory animals like lions circle their prey, they sort of keep their eyes on them and sort of move around in a circle kind of thing. So there were certain little things like that I was kind of like just peppering in there.
Does it make it harder?
So when I did the audition...
Sorry. Does it make it harder as an actor to not have a lot of context for an audition? Or do you kind of get to do more of how, like, just kind of create a character behind it in your head, because obviously you don't even have a name. Even once you were on set, we don't know his name.
Right.
I imagine they didn't give you a lot of backstory, so you're just kind of creating him internally and then going forward with that.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to everything. Like anything that you do, I mean, not just acting, but anything really. There's always sort of like things you got to weigh up. And sometimes when you get an audition as an actor, when there's minimal dialogue, I mean, the Doctor doesn't say a whole lot. He has a couple of lines. You're trying to sort of like figure out, what is going on, what is the motive, what is the situation, especially when it's a confined scene that you're seeing. You've got no context of anything before, who the character is that you're in the scene with, all this kind of stuff. So it can be a little bit sort of like, what do I do with this? Because as an actor, your initial thought is, I want to do something cool, but I also want to do something that relates to what they're looking for, but you don't know what they're looking for. You're not talking to the producers or the showrunner or the creators of the show, so you're completely sort of left at your own sort of whim. And I think there's also that afraid of freedom in that too, because it's like, here's a thing, here's a seed, go grow it into something you think is going to be interesting. So that freedom, that creativity is exciting, it is fun. I think when an audition or something is kind of very structured, very, very sort of specific, like he laughs here, he says this, he holds his breath, he says this beat, those things are great for guidance, but as an actor, you're supposed to try to like make that natural, make that your own. So there are certain things that you sometimes will sort of put aside a little bit, or maybe move it somewhere else,
Yeah.
But with the scene, I had very little to work from. So
Did you come up with any backstory? Sorry. Did you come up with a backstory in your mind?
I came up with I'm not going to tell you what it is because as an actor you keep those secrets secret, but I did come up with a little sort of, I want to say backstory, but it's like a moment before, and also a feeling about the character in the room. And what I came up with was on the lines of what the show was, as it turns out when I saw it, but it was definitely different.
Yeah.
So when you sort of, eventually go out and shoot it, and then you ask a couple of questions about, just like anything you can tell me, then it starts to like, okay, all right. I wasn't too off track, so it's not too hard to steer on, but there's definitely some nuances there. But as far as the audition process, yeah, November 2022, I did the tape from home upstairs, and I did 2 takes. And the way that I did the tape, not knowing the context of the scene or what's going on, I actually do the moment of the drowning in the scene, and in my mind and in my performance, I've killed her.
Oh my God.
I leave her body in the sink. I start to walk away. I look back at the body and I kind of like sort of adjust my neck because it's been obviously like a very physically intense moment.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of like, I don't say anything, but I just kind of like give her that sort of look of like disgust or sneering at her, just like leaving the body and being proud of it and just walking away. And I'm sure it looked very dark,
Well, it was all very Edgar Allan Poe.
Yes, exactly. And then I felt good about it, and I showed my friend, and she was like, oh yeah, this is great, this is like, wow, this is kind of creepy to know you do this. And then I sent it off, but the next morning you always have those new day feelings, right? New day thoughts and impressions, especially when you're creating something. And I was a bit worried that I went overkill, because I was thinking, oh man, this is Disney, this is Marvel. I think I went a bit dark. And then a little bit of time went by, and I think it was about a month or two. I'm trying to remember exactly. I think it was December or January. And then I'm what's called pinned for the role, which means that they're looking at the selections. There'll be a lot of people audition for it, probably a couple of hundred or something. I don't know, I'm guessing, because with the self tapes, they can go through the auditions quicker than doing it in the room. And so I've always heard those numbers are often higher. And then I was pinned, which I was, production let my agent know, which means I'm probably in the last 3 to 5 people they're considering. And that was very exciting. So I was like, okay, well, don't, get too excited here. Just sort of get prepared, get ready in case they need to call you in. You've got your ducks in a row and you're ready to go. Um, and then nothing happened for a little bit. I think that's when it went into January, and then I heard from my agent that one of her other clients, who is Chloe Camp, who plays young Lilia in the show.
Oh, wow.
Um, she had booked it, and she got the offer, and she was going to be filming soon. And because I heard that, I was super excited for her because I know her, or I've not met her in person, but I know her mother, Chrissy. And I was super excited for her daughter to get this role. And but I was like, oh, what's going on with this role?
Yeah.
And then I didn't hear anything, and I thought, okay, let it go. I'm working on some other stuff. I'm auditioning for other things. And then all of a sudden, about a week later, I think I was having lunch on my own. It's kind of just sort of out and about. And then I suddenly get this email come through with production wants your clothing sizes. And I was like, oh. But again, don't get too excited. We could just be getting that from all like 5 last people, just in case, so they're ready. So I sent all those across, and then I think it was about a day or two later, I get the offer, and I just was jumping up and down. I was like, yes. And then when I went out to shoot it in February of 2023 in Atlanta, Georgia, at Triller Studios, I got there and everyone was so amazing, and I said to them, oh, must ask this. The lines that I had in the audition, are they the lines in the show? Because sometimes they change them.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, yes, good question. Yes, it is the same. It's not been changed or anything. I was like, okay, good.
So you didn't have, from what I understand, then you didn't have the rest of the context of the show still. They didn't give you any other, like, you
No.
didn't. So you still didn't know what was going on, didn't know it was a dream sequence. You're just there to film that one scene.
Yeah, I was there for 2 days. We shot the whole scene over 2 days. We did the physical drowning part first. I'm sorry if I'm spoiling anything here if people haven't seen it, but I would hope people have.
I think if you're listening to this podcast, we broke down every episode, so it'd be crazy if you tuned in and you hadn't seen it.
Yeah, I'm trying to not, be too spoilery, but there's not a whole lot to not spoil. So, but yeah, we did that on the first day, and then the second day was all the whole bulk of the scene with the dialogue and all the reactions and stuff. So yeah, when I got there, it was sort of like settling in and, trying to sort of like be present and ready and stuff, but without sort of, asking too many questions. But then when I was getting the fitting for the costume from Daniel Salon, I said to him, because I didn't really get to speak much at all so I met Jack Schaefer later, but that was sort of later in the day on the first day.
Yeah.
By which point I was already in costume with the makeup and everything. And so I didn't really have, a producer or anybody to ask, a director to ask. I didn't meet Rachel until later when we started filming. And so I just asked Daniel because he seemed to have a very sort of good grasp on everything that's involved in the show. And I said, is there anything you can tell me about the character? Because I don't know really anything about him. And then he gave me the nugget of like, this is all the sort of dream sequence. There is Jen is a witch, and there's the whole sort of 100 years ago sort of science, medicine versus magic, and all that kind of stuff. And he just gave me like a real sort of 30-second little little monologue about it, and it was enough. And I thanked him for it, and I says, you know what, this is great. Thank you so much. That really does help.
Yeah.
And then it was like a couple of 2 or 3 or 4 hours later that we started filming. But yeah, it was funny. I went onto the set, which was at Triller Studios, which is formerly Pinewood in Atlanta. And it was amazing because you walk in the sound stage itself through the doors, and then inside you just see this massive, from the outside of it, wooden structure, with all the back boards and everything. And there's a ramp that goes up into it with a doorway, open doorway. And I walked up into it for us to block it out and start rehearsing. And all of a sudden, I was in the house that you see in the show.
Yeah, I was going to ask, were you in both the house
incredible.
And then, because they kind of had your kind of doctors. So it must have been 2 different sets then, the bit where you're actually being in your, I guess, medical room. I don't know how you describe it. And then also the beach house. Did you get to be in both of
There's
those?
only the medical room.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, there's only the beach house. Sorry, only the beach house. There is no medical room.
Oh.
So a lot of people thought that there was a lot of people thought certain angles, like the side angle of me pushing her head down, looked like some sort of, because it had the hanging lights, looked like a medical room or a surgery. No, the entire scene takes place in the kitchen where she does the whole potion. There is no other set.
See, I've seen it
So
4
everything
times
was done.
and I fully thought there
What's
was
that?
a set. I've seen it 4 times, maybe more, and I fully thought it was a separate set. And like, that's
No,
we'll have to
no.
when we do the
It's shot from
rewatch.
2 angles. It's shot from 2 angles. When she comes out, she's in the kitchen and she's standing at the sink, and then she thinks about the ingredients she needs,
Mm-hmm.
and then she goes, and then she goes off. She goes into the pantry. That whole shot when she's now walking from the kitchen to the pantry, I'm standing right next to the camera guy who's turning the camera, watching her go from the kitchen into the pantry, and that whole thing's done in a single shot. And as soon as he tilts the camera away from the kitchen, I run in, plant my bag, which you don't really see because I'm kind of blocking it, but there's a bag.
Mm-hmm.
And then I plant myself. And as soon as she comes back out, they've already done the light switch. They've done a transition with the lights to make the blue mood lights
Mm-hmm.
of the water. And then it's now the whole scene plays out. So we had to do all that in one shot. It was fascinating, the choreography.
I love how
But
many
yes,
practical.
it's one set.
I love how many practical effects there are on Agatha, and I think it really is one of my favorite things about both WandaVision and Agatha All Along is how practical those sets are. Nick and I both went to film school, so we really appreciate, like, we're always just gunning for more practical effects, and I think that's what a lot of people made it feel more real. Like, I saw videos of, you know, the Witches Road set, and obviously they built the beach house,
amazing.
which is... Did they make you grow that mustache, or was that like your decision?
I got a bit of a funny story about that. So because I sort of know ahead of time, like, okay, you know, the clothing sizes, then I started thinking about preparation, and then also the offers, and the offer takes, you know, you sort of shooting in like a week or 2. So I'd already been growing my hair out, you know, embarrassingly so. It was in dire need of a cut, you know. And my beard had grown out fully. I had a grey beard that was sort of down to about here, and you know, my patchy moustache. I don't grow a great moustache. It's about 50-60%. It has kind of little gaps in it. I don't know why. So when I got there, you know, I was pretty shaggy looking.
Yeah.
And I went to, you know, makeup and hair, and they thanked me. They said, "Oh, thank you for growing all this out because it gives us stuff to work with. We can trim everything down and get it to how we want it to." You know, because a lot of actors make the mistake of like, "Oh, I'll get my hair cut and shave everything off right before I go there, so I'm sort of set ready." And then, you know, makeup and hair are like, "Oh no, we actually kind of wanted to do our own thing with this," you know. So to answer your question, when I got there, they asked me to go shave off everything except moustache. So I shaved off everything, and then I did a, you know, good job of it. Made sure there was no sort of like, you know, 5 o'clock shadow or anything. And then I went back in, and they, you know, very politely says, "We're going to add a little something to the moustache." And I was like, "Okay." And it being Marvel in their trailers, they have really wide drawers, like several feet wide drawers that you pull out, and they have moustaches, beards, glasses, like all these different things. And they pull out this big drawer full of moustaches, and they start like pasting bits on there and building it up. And what you don't really see in the scene that much because of all the moody lighting is that I have slightly pale face makeup applied and slightly sort of like dark rings around my eyes, just to kind of like make them look a little bit sort of hollowed in, you know. And I do have a picture of that, but it's yeah, it's a little bit subtle because like the blue lighting is quite strong, you know.
I have your, when I was, because I knew I was going to ask this question, I have all your Instagram pictures of you like getting ready to be the Doctor, because I loved how like Edwardian, I like period films, so I like how kind of actually it was very accurate to kind of what an Edwardian Doctor would have sort of looked like. And I thought that it was a good contrast to obviously Jen's in the sort of modern influencer type look. So I think it was a really good contrast to have this kind of, you know, because Victorian doctors are scary, like just in concept, to be honest. So I think it was a really nice contrast. And
it definitely added contrast to the scene, didn't it? Because she's got that sort of very like, you know, classy attire for the, you know, the tone of that particular episode. and then she's suddenly thrust into this like, very scary, strange situation where there's somebody from another time. Like it's funny because when I watched when the episode came out, I watched a lot of the reaction videos, people post on YouTube. There were just tons and tons of them. And I went down a rabbit hole of watching them, and it was so interesting watching all the reactions because these were, supposedly first-time reactions. And then when she comes back and you see the back of me with the sort of apron with the ties at the back and the top, the range of what people thought at that moment, what I was pretty wide. Butcher, chef, surgeon. I think there were some others too. They escaped me, but there was quite a few. So it was quite interesting. And then the amount of funny little sort of reactions verbally to my first line, "You are an inconvenient woman."
It's a really good villain line.
Extremely funny. It's very unusual, isn't it? It's
really quotable. I think they did you like a really good one with that. I think that Agatha has really great quips, and you're one of our only, like, obviously we've got the Salem 7, but you're a major villain to Jen, who I would love to see you back in any sort of Midnight Suns project kind of. I want to see what Jen was wearing when this actually happened to her. I want to see that scene again, because obviously it's, to some degree, it's a memory. So you might end up going and shooting that again, potentially, in terms of, like, Jen's backstory. We would see, why do you want to pick off Jen? She's so nice, midwife.
Yeah, I'm
truly evil.
I'm curious about that. Yeah, I know Sashir said, I think it was on Collider, she said, around that time, I think it was around like October, November, she said that she would love to revisit her backstory and sort of expand upon that. So it would be amazing. I mean, it would be, I think there's definitely a lot more story to tell there. We need to know the relationship and what exactly happened. Like, did that actually happen, or is that sort of a different view of something that happened but sort of related, or symbolism of that, that moment or something? I don't know. I actually don't know anything. So
yeah,
I love that. I love the secrecy. I love the idea that if they were to expand upon that story and bring me back for more Agatha or something else, Midnight Suns or something, to see where that goes, I'd be fascinated. I mean, I'd be just as much of a fan of, like, oh, tell me what's going on.
If you could have a team up with any villain already in the MCU, who do you think the Doctor would, like, who do you think would be a good team up for you? Who would you love to work with?
I like Doctor Strange. I mean, I like Doctor Strange, but he's not really a villain. So I mean, but he's interesting. But yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I love them all so much. I just love villains. I've just always found them so interesting. I'm curious to see what Doctor Doom's like. I'm curious to see some of the new villains. I even as a kid, I remember watching, like movies and TV shows, and everyone's rooting for the hero. I'm always rooting for the villain. I was that weird kid, but yeah, no, I know Doctor Strange is the hero, but I like him because he's strange and he's mysterious, and there's definitely like sides to him. But yeah, as far as a villain, I don't know. I'm not sure. It's a good question.
I'm worried that you might end up with Stryker and Hydra there, because what they're getting up to with Bucky. It feels a little bit like your Doctor might be also ready to brainwash some people, getting Yelena's head, maybe.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people, throw out theories and ideas, like Doctor Sinister.
Yes.
Was one. Again, this is nothing. I don't know anything like that. So
no.
I don't know if that's. I'm sure that's not it, but yes, I've had a few sort of theories. I've had people sort of message me and ask me, like, I mean, maybe you're somebody already in the comics, and it's like, but no, it's a fascinating role. I mean, it would be interesting to see if it did sort of reveal something much bigger than a Doctor, and it's something more intricate and more sort of grandiose would be interesting.
Well, obviously you knew how to contact Agatha, because obviously we find out later in the show that it was Agatha that gave you the power to bind Jen. So you know, you
which
must.
I didn't know about until I watched the show, by the way.
Was that like were you sitting on your sofa like, oh my god, I know Agatha? Was that like a fun reveal for
I was
you?
taking notes because you had two reveals
Mm-hmm.
after episode 3. You know, you had the campfire reveal where Jen's talking about her root working and her history and the Boston obstetrics
Mm-hmm.
thing going on, and me and the doctor, and he took away my power, and I don't know how, because how did he bind me without magic and all this kind of stuff. And then later on, yes, you know, the reveal about, you know, Agatha being involved in it. It's actually funny because I've had people ask me about that, because uh, you know, it does explain what happened, but it's sort of said in a little bit of a sort of ambiguous way slightly, if you're not
Mm-hmm.
sort of like putting all the pieces together. And I had one person actually argue with me about my character's involvement in
Oh,
the Jen Agatha situation, and I was very politely saying, no, 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 it's actually this. You know,
yeah.
it's like, you know, I do know. um, so it was kind of funny because it was I think the angle they had was it wasn't the doctor at all. He wasn't even involved. It was just Agatha. And I was like, no, it's not quite true.
No,
You
I
know, if you
think
go back and listen, it, you know, Agatha said the patriarchy would pay good money to shush a lady, you know, and it was bind or burn. So, you know, bind was obviously the better option, right?
yeah.
So there's that whole thing. So obviously the doctor was, you know, or you know, the whole system, the whole patriarchy was paying for the means which Agatha could supply to quieten a witch.
And for some reason, it involves drowning, which I think Marvel needs to give us the answer to whether or not he did actually drown her, or if that was her feeling submerged and kind of, yeah. Obviously, none of us know,
Yeah.
but we want to know, Marvel. Let Scott and everybody know. Now,
Yes, we all want to know.
I don't know if you remember, but when we talked a little bit back and forth on Instagram, you said that when you started acting class, you almost didn't go into acting, and that there was a story there, and I deliberately
Yeah.
didn't ask you about it so I could ask you now. What was the story about you almost not going into acting?
Yeah, so I moved over to the States in 2002, and I was not an actor at the time. And I moved out here for my day job, which I still do, which
Mm-hmm.
is video game art. Been making video games a long time. And I was at PlayStation in London. I transferred to PlayStation San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
And I came out here, and then after a few years, by 2008, which was the Great Recession, where a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people got laid off, a lot of jobs, you know, were let go. I was one of those,
Yeah.
and that happened end of 2008 in December. And I thought, oh, I'll be fine. I've got, you know, at the time, sort of, was it like almost 20 years experience,
Mm-hmm.
so I'll be okay. I'll find another job. But that wasn't the truth. It was very rough out there. It was you know, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of layoffs happening.
Yeah.
And after a few months, it was around March of 2009, I was like, all right, I need to do something while I'm off work. I've been off work now for like 3 or 4 months, and I
Yeah.
need to do something to kind of keep myself active and not go crazy sending out resumes all the time, CVs. So it just clicked one day. It was weird because I thought about it as a kid when I was like around 11 or 12, but I never really did anything with it.
So you
But
were in a bunch of school
it
plays.
clicked with me. I've got a funny school play story. I'll tell you afterwards. Please remind me.
I will.
It's a I jokingly make it the excuse for reason why it took me another 20 years to try acting again. So yeah, please remind me because it's a particularly silly one. But yeah, one day it clicked. I thought, you know what? I've always wanted to try an acting class, and if I'm rubbish at it, if I'm bad at acting,
Yeah.
it's okay. Maybe it will help me with public speaking, because in my games career, I sometimes have to do presentations. I'd have to
Mm-hmm.
get up in front of a, you know, a whiteboard like the one behind me and do a presentation. And even though I'm, you know, confident in the subject matter, you know,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes getting in front of 20, 30 people can be a bit daunting. So I thought, you know, there's sort of a win-win there. Hopefully it will help with that at least, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I find one that's local to me. And I don't know anything about acting. I'm like, what is SAG-AFTRA, acting schools? You know, I'm like trying to figure everything out. And then I find one that's locally. And funny enough, the acting class was right round the corner from Sony where I got laid off.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I had a very bright, recognizable car. And I pulled up there and I saw co-workers that were still working at Sony walking down the
Ooh.
street, and I was like, oh God, if they see me like go into this acting class, they're gonna think I've lost my mind. But thankfully the building was very nondescript. It was like an office building, so you wouldn't be able to tell.
Mm-hmm.
So I walked in there and I went up the elevator, the lift, and
Mm-hmm.
then the doors open on the second floor, and I go down this dark corridor, very gloomy corridor, past all these doors of businesses to this last door on the right, which was the acting class. And I put my hand on the door handle, and I was 36, almost 37 at the time, and I thought, what am I doing? This is stupid. I have a career. This is like some crazy idea. So I just turned around and left.
Oh
And I
no.
went back down the hallway, I went down the elevator, I got back in my car, and I drove about half a mile. And then I pulled over. I know it sounds a little corny, but it's true. I pulled over and I looked in the rearview mirror, and I stared at myself and I said, Scott, what are you doing? You're the type of person who checks everything out. You're nosy. Go back. Go check it out.
Yeah.
So I turned the car around and went back. And that was it. And then I started a class, and it was nerve-wracking. I thought I was only going
Mm-hmm.
to be there to watch, and they asked me to do an exercise. And I was
Straight
literally
in.
sweating. Yeah, and I was like, no, 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 I don't want to do it. And they're like, come on, it'd be fun, try it out. I was like, oh God, I was sweating, and the page was shaking in my hand.
Oh.
It was all on tape. And I was like, oh my God, it was so nerve-wracking. And then I got into it and was enjoying it for a few weeks, and I told some friends, and then some of my friends said, what are you doing? And even close friends and family. And then a few friends said to me, why are you even doing this? You're starting way too late. Nothing's going to happen, nothing at all. This is a complete waste of time. And I'm really stubborn, and
Well,
somebody tells
yeah.
me a no, I hear a yes. I'm like, I'll show you. So it ended up working out. So
Well, yeah, I don't know why anybody would say no. There's so many parts, like, when you like, especially for, I think it's actually much harder if you're like, mid-20s and you have to try and be the hot, like the hot person. Whereas like once there's a plain sailing into, you could be a dad. You can play a dad. Anyone can play a dad.
Yeah, I guess their thinking was that there's already going to be tens of thousands of actors who are my age, who already
Mm-hmm.
have 10, 20 years worth of credits and things, and they're going to get picked first. So I think there was that. I get the angle. I do.
Mm-hmm.
I just I'm not saying that's the, be all of it, because it's there are always like so many different experiences. I mean, every single actor I've met has had a different experience,
Mm-hmm.
different journey, and almost no two are alike. But the way I said about it, after sort of like, trying to get my head around it and figuring out a few things, and making a couple of little mistakes at
Mm-hmm.
the beginning, trying to like understand this industry because it's vastly different to video games. Um, was just to sort of enjoy the day to day of it. I think if you get caught up in like, oh, by so many years I want to be this, and comparing yourself to other people on a similar timeline, and then they might be up here and you're down here, will drive you crazy. So you have to really just like, you know what? I'm just going to enjoy each day, because tomorrow you just don't know what's going to happen. And that is so true, because the day before I got the Marvel audition,
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. I had no idea that was coming, So that's what I find wonderful about life, is that every day, if you keep your mind open and keep yourself positive and you keep yourself free, I think life has so many fun, interesting, random things to offer.
Well,
And that's what I enjoy. I find that interesting.
Well, it's amazing that you were at lunch and you were like, oh, it's amazing that somebody I know has booked this role, but I probably won't book it. Then they ask you for wardrobe sizes, and then the next week you're in a Marvel trailer,
Yeah.
and now, you've got that Agatha. I saw you posting your like little coin, the Agatha coin and the Agatha hat,
Yes.
and that you've got that experience forever.
I have
It's
to have all the swag.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love my swag. Hence the Marvel hoodie.
Look, I'm trying to buy your
Yeah,
swag
no.
off eBay, so is this?
Yeah, like every. Sorry, go on.
I was gonna say, is this your favorite set you've been on, or do you have another? I went through obviously your IMDb. Is this kind of your favorite set, or do you have a favorite set memory elsewhere that you want to? What?
No, I think yeah, I think this one is probably the biggest one.
Mm-hmm.
Lodge 49 was my first network show. That was shot in 2019, I think it was, and that was also out in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And because that was my first big show, it was just so exciting seeing all the, crew and cast and the big production quality and everything that goes into that. And they were so incredibly nice too. Like it was just such a nice experience. Like everyone like clapped at the end, just like they did at Marvel. They said that's a wrap on Scott Butler, the director. Both directors gave me a hug on Lodge 49, and Rachel Goldberg on Agatha. So kind, so sweet, and just you just drive home just like, wow, I want to do more of that. That's great.
Yeah. So what? Oh, let me check. I did have a list of. So you've got something coming out this year, didn't you have it's on IMDb? I'm pretty sure it said you had a release coming out this year. What's obviously mostly you've got video game stuff coming out this year. People might not know, but Scott actually worked on Snoopy. My other interest is Snoopy, and I just go
way
around
back.
I just telling everyone, I'm like, I'm interviewing the guy from Agatha All Along, but more importantly, he worked on a Snoopy game.
Snoopy rolls.
Yes.
No, I love Snoopy. My first year of video games in 1989, I was 17. One of my first jobs I worked on was converting Snoopy and the Case of the Missing Blanket, which was a late 80s video game, from Commodore Amiga to PC. So there's a funny story behind that. At the time, the graphic modes that you had for PC were very, very limiting. There was it's not like games of today where you just got a billion colors on screen. Without getting too technical and boring, the choices were like monochrome, 2 colors, right? You also had 4 colors. Now on PC there were 2 4-color palettes. There was yellow, green, red, and black, and then there was cyan, which is like light blue, magenta, white, and black. And I started converting the Snoopy graphics, choosing the yellow, green, red, and black palette because I wanted green trees and red houses, but it meant the sky had to be yellow, which was weird. And then, of course, because there's no white in the palette, I made Snoopy yellow.
Oh yeah.
And then of course the IP pushes back and says Snoopy can't be yellow.
Yeah.
It's gonna look like the yellow dog from Garfield or something. It's just not gonna work.
Yeah, I was thinking of the dog from Biff, Kip and Chipper, a very niche British reference there.
Yeah, right. So I had to then get all the graphics and then switch them over to the other palette. So Snoopy was now white. We now have blue skies, which look good, but now we have pink houses. But yes, that was one of my first jobs, and it was really fun to work on that. I was on it for like about 2 or 3 months, I think.
It was like The Awesome Adventures of Frankie Stargazer was the project I was thinking about. That.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with that.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the creator of that has passed away.
Oh, that's such a shame.
So, yeah, but I hope someday that we can make that film, because it would be lovely to honor her,
Absolutely.
with the film, because it was her dream to make it. And it was based on a book that she created. So, yeah, I would love to do that someday. It's just going to be tricky, but
Absolutely.
yeah.
So do you have, so you're mostly working on video games at the moment, and obviously it's probably a secret. Obviously you can't tell us anything about what Marvel haven't been back in touch. They're being very secretive about whether we're getting a season 2 or not. You might have seen the other day that Brad Winterbottom said he would like to make a second season. But that
was interesting. Yes.
Yeah. I like, honestly, I almost thought about sending it to you when I saw it. I was like I want to.
I saw it quickly too, because I saw it quickly as well, because clearly I'm a fan too. I mean, I love the show, I really do. I mean, my sort of working on it aside, I absolutely love the show. It has so much heart, and like you said too, being an 80s kid, I love the practicality of the sets, the practical sets, the minimal CGI. I love that it was, real, visceral. I think actually the fact that it was a lower budget show helped it.
Absolutely.
They made it all about the story and the characters and the heart and the charm and the twists and the mysteries, and it had so much of that. And I just think that whole corner of the Marvel universe of magic and sort of like horror almost, sort of elements, and kind of lots and lots of mystery and spooky stuff going on, and also
Yeah.
humor and kookiness and things, was so fun and different.
Yeah.
And when I've talked to people since the show come out, people that may not have seen it yet, I've told them about the show and how it feels, because you know everyone has different experiences. Some people might be like, well, I've watched a lot of Marvel stuff, and it's like, but this is different.
It's really different.
So yeah, and then everyone that's gone off and watched it from me saying that, it says, oh god, okay, I'm hooked now. I'm so hooked. I've been binging it. So it's
So
been great.
I would love to see you get to work with. Obviously, we know that I don't think you would have gotten to meet Catherine on that set, because I don't think
Sort of did, sort of, yeah. So interesting little story. So on the first day, they get me in the whole attire and the makeup and everything, and we go onto the set and we are blocking out the scene. Initially, I'm doing it with Sashia's stand-in, and then Sashia comes in, and then we start working on the scene and blocking it out and figuring out exactly what we're going to do with it. And when we're running through the lines in the scene, and all the Marvel producers, and I'm sure Jack and Catherine are probably watching on the monitors outside the set, was watching what we were doing with it. Catherine burst into the set with these big glasses on, and she just yells out at myself and Jen, Sashia. She yells out, "Remarkable, remarkable, remarkable!" And I'm like,
that's
thank
so
you.
nice.
I felt good about that, and I'd seen her a little bit. She walked past me and smiled when she was chatting to Jack and things like that when I was sat in my chair outside. So I had that, and then when I was getting my makeup applied, she was also in the trailer. It was just the two of us with the makeup artists, but they were having a whole discussion, and I let them be. But yeah, I sort of met her, kind of, and then I met Jack as well, or Jack Schaefer, and that was before we shot anything, when I just got all the stuff on, and I get a knock on the trailer door, and if you know, like TV and film trailers, they're kind of raised up, and they have the steps going down. So when I open the door, not only do I look spooky, but I'm also about 3 foot taller than everyone else, because I'm up on the ramp, right, of the trailer. So I open the door, and I kind of like, I'm sort of getting a little bit in character. I probably glared a little bit, and then Daniel, the costume designer, is standing next to Jack Schaefer, and this is the first time I meet her. And Jack's like, very nice to meet you. And then she looks at me and she goes, oh yes, this is gonna work.
That's so
and she
good.
said, then she said, lose the glasses.
Oh, okay.
They had me wear glasses originally.
Yeah, and, I think that she's right. Obviously, Jack Schaefer's always right, but I think that it is scarier that you've got those you've got very dark eyes, and so when in that blue light, I say Edgar Allan Poe because, like, I don't know, there's kind of the Crow vibes there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, my eyes are very, very dark. They're almost black. And she said something about, I want to see those eyes or something. And I was really glad she said that, because once I took the glasses off and I saw the whole thing, I thought this is more piercing.
Absolutely.
I'm going to be sort of more sort of connected with her because I lock eyes with Sashia through the entire scene. I don't let go. I don't even for a moment glance away or look down or anything. I locked eyes with her intentionally to make her feel uneasy. Because when you lock eyes with somebody, full on like this, there's that sort of thing of like power and, almost you want to look away kind of thing, because it's a little too much, right? So there were little sort of subtleties. Like I do blink for a moment in the scene, but I kept most of it unblinking, But the blink sort of happened with the sort of intensity of the line, because you will see my right eye kind of twitches and actually winks on its own. It's kind of funny. It's sort of caught in that scene. So because there's all that sort of like, intensity kind of bubbling up. But I wanted the when I did the lines in the self-tape and also the show itself, I wanted the lines to be extremely personal to her. A lot of people would play out a scene like that is intense, that is sort of villainous, where they're sort of like screaming or yelling those lines. You are an inconvenient woman, But I wanted to put it under the voice.
Absolutely.
Oh, inconvenient woman. So it's more about, It's more about there's a history there.
Mm-hmm.
He knows her and she knows him, right?
Yeah.
So that was what I wanted to do. Oh, one little funny little story. When we finished the blocking and Catherine, said that great thing and was cheering us on, I came out the set to go sit in the chair for a bit,
Mm-hmm.
and I come down the ramp out the set, and to the left of me is what's called the video village, where they have all the screens,
Yeah.
and all the producers and everybody are sat there. And when I come down out the ramp, a couple of them are clapping, and they're all like saying, "You are really creepy." And I was still a bit in character. I come down the ramp and I look at them over my left shoulder and I go, "Why, thank you." But then I smiled afterwards, so I wasn't too much.
No. Don't want to
It was kind of
method
funny
it
playing
too
with it a
hard.
little bit. Yeah, I don't want to go too much, but I was having fun with the role, and they sort of laughed and they says, "Yeah, this is gonna be fun scene." So,
I want to make sure
yeah,
we
it was
get
super
your
exciting.
story about your school play in.
Oh God, yeah. All right, I'll do the short version of it. I was probably 7 years old at school. It was in
Mhm.
Bromley in Kent, a little school there, and I'm Jesus. I'm playing Jesus. It's
Of
my
course.
first nativity play, and the girl who's playing Mary is my first crush.
Oh.
Her name was Joanne. She's
Mhm.
very, very pretty, and we're doing the actual play in front of all the parents.
Yeah.
There's probably 100 or so, 200 parents there, and I haven't yet done a line. I'm at the bottom at the side of the stage, next to the stairs. The stage was probably only about 15, 20 foot wide,
Mhm.
polished wood, right?
Mhm.
With stairs either side of it. And I'm on one side of the stage, and then the headmaster is sat on the other side of the stage to the, next to the steps.
Yep.
Finally, my beginning scene comes up, my first scene. And the tunic they gave me, not that unlike the Doctor, I just realized that actually, the tunic they gave me was too long for me. I was a little kid, and it was about a foot too long. And as I as I ran up the stairs to do my first line, overly eager for some reason, I was like, now I can go do my line. I ran up the steps and I tripped on the tunic. I went flying because of my velocity of running up the steps. I landed on my belly like a seal. I slid across the stage. I'm not making this up. I slid across the stage on my,
Oh my
belly,
goodness.
right past my crush. And I went down the other steps. And then I went between the legs and under the chair of the headmaster, Mr. Perkis, who then yelled out in front of the entire, audience of parents, "Mr. Butler, get out from underneath my chair henceforth." Everyone burst out laughing.
Must have been kind of a primary
Shimmied
school
out.
legend.
Yeah, and I shimmied out, bright red cheeks, very embarrassed, but then went up and then did the rest of the play. Very professional.
The show must go on.
But I got nicknamed for the remaining 3 years at that school, called Flying Jesus.
Well, an apt
So-
nickname in some ways. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on and interviewing us. Unfortunately, Teams doesn't give us as long as we'd like, but it's been
right.
you've given us so much insight, and I know that everyone's probably going to have more questions in the comments, but Scott is so friendly, and I'm sure you don't mind me saying this, if you want to talk to him, like, get in his Instagram comments, obviously follow him. He always posts the best behind the scenes stuff and is such a wonderful part of our fandom, I guess is the word for
Thank
it.
you.
Well, thank you so much, Scott, for being on the podcast. Go and follow Scott over on his Instagram, which I will say in the outro, because I don't want to take up too much of the camera time. It's Scott Butler Act. Okay. Sorry, I'm not very professional of me. Thank you so much, Scott.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
So that was our interview with Scott Butler.
The loveliest guy in the world.
He was
genuinely
so
absolute
nice, yeah.
pleasure. So you can follow Scott over on Instagram at Scott Butler Act. Same on TikTok. Please give him all the love in the world. He is so responsive to fans, so kind, wonderful to share his time. And if you have questions for him and you would love us to do a Q&A, send them our way. Let us know.
I mean, if you have questions for him, just tweet at him. That's where, as we learned, he is well versed in answering back to every single tweeted question. So.
Yeah, but he was such a dream.
Yeah.
He was recently on another podcast, actually, Vigilante Vibes podcast, so you can probably also check him out there. But yeah, he was the best. Get autographs from him, do everything. He is, I think he does cameos too, like, give this guy the world. He really deserves it. So thank you so much for tuning in this week.
Yeah, next week I think we're going back to our regularly scheduled programming.
Yes, we will be doing some comic recaps for y'all and doing the news in more depth. Probably still talking about what we were talking about today because it seems like we have updates.
Yes, we'll
by the hour.
We'll probably have another update that it was somebody else and... Yeah.
So if you can't wait to hear more from me, you can find me over at The Wonderverse on Instagram, at Into the Wonderverse on TikTok, The Wonderverse on Threads, X, The Works, and you can find the podcast over on YouTube.
And you can find me on Blue Sky, The Film Nick. I'm on Letterboxd, The Film Nick, so you can see what great movies I've been watching. That's said with an asterisk because I think Hannah might have something to say about The Postman.
Oh, don't, because I would love to do a whole episode on The Postman.
But yeah, so you can find me on there. Yeah.
Thank you to the amazing Lily, as always, for our gorgeous, gorgeous podcast art. And Melody Ray Griffiths for their movies. Not for their movies, for the music.
Yep.
And until next time, stay magical.